Here is how to make this really adorable baby bubble romper. I made this shape on 2 layers of a double cotton gauze fabric, and I cut this on the fold, and here's the pattern that I used. I'll show you the dimensions of this. I just kind of roughly did this. I'm not a super precise person when it comes to sewing, so just kind of cut out a shape like this. This side is 16 inches for mine. This side was 1.25 inches, and then 8 inches. And over here, a foot, and the top was 7 inches. And then I cut this side on the fold, and I cut this twice. So here's what it looks like. Again, it's just eyeball. There aren't exact angles to these different sides or anything. If you hear noise, my baby is eating right now. You know, I'm making her this outfit, but forgive me if you hear her eating the bottle. So first step, you're just going to take these two pieces and put them right sides together. And that just means that the nice side of fabric is touching. And then I'm using clips. You can use pins too to clip or pin the sides together. And next I'm just going to sew down each side. I'm using my regular sewing machine with a straight stitch, and then I'm going to finish that on my serger. Repeat for both sides. It looks like this. And then moving on to the next step, now that the sides are attached, and this is just going to be finishing the entire bottom as well as the top band. I'm using my serger, but you can also just use a zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine if you don't have a serger. Same for the last step. Next, I'm taking 1/4 inch elastic, and I'm cutting that for the top band and legs. For this, just put them around your baby's upper torso area and legs and make sure it's snug without being too tight. And now we're just going to fold over the top band and iron it down. I'm folding over about 1 inch. And this will allow me to add an elastic channel so that the top band can be elastic. And so I'm just pressing this down to keep it in place, and then doing the same for each leg opening. So again, just about 1 inch, maybe a little less, folding that over to the wrong side and just pressing that all in place. Now that everything is pressed down, I am just going to top stitch all of this, leaving enough room for my 1/4 inch elastic for all of this, so pretty close to the edge. Just top stitching around each leg, not the bottom part, just each leg as well as the top band. So always remember to back stitch and then stitch forward. This is just using a regular straight stitch on my sewing machine from one edge of the leg all the way to the next. And then also doing the top band. When you do the top band, be sure to leave about 2 inches opening so that we can thread that elastic through. So it doesn't need to be exactly 2 inches, just enough room to be able to put your elastic through a safety pin and then put that in that channel that you just top stitched and left enough room down for. I am just working this all the way around, and then I will overlap the elastic and zigzag stitch up and back to secure it in place. It's a little tedious to get this under the presser foot, but then just do a zigzag stitch forward and backwards a few times to make sure that it's secure, and it will look a little something like this. It's not beautiful, but holds it in place. And then have that disperse evenly across the top band, and then that opening that you left open before, just top stitch that down to make that entire channel secure. Next up, after that, we are going to do the same for the legs. So taking those leg elastic pieces and just threading it through each channel from the front to the back, and it'll look just kind of like this, and then do the other side. I safety pin mine in place to each part of the leg, and then you just want to secure it where the opening is. So this is kind of where the snap crotch area will be, and I'm just securing the elastic kind of near the end, not all the way to the bottom. It does not need to be in an exact placement or anything, just you want your elastic to be secured in place. So here, it's kind of the process. I'm doing it for each side, the front and the back. So these are 4 pieces of elastic, and it looks like this. You can see little stitches holding it in place. I did use a zigzag stitch to make it extra secure, but you can use a regular stitch as well. Now using this snap, these snaps are really nice. They're on a little band, makes it really easy to secure them. And I'm just putting this at the bottom of this bubble romper. My fabric ended up more in a point than I intended it to, so I'm going to fold that up and secure it later. I think ideally if I did this project again, I would have the pattern be slightly different so it wasn't a triangle, but I'm just going to sew all the way around these little strips of buttons around the rectangle. And I'm using my zipper foot so that I can get really close to the edge without getting in the way of the button. And when I get to a corner, I'm leaving the needle inserted and then lifting my presser foot, moving my fabric around to the other side, putting my presser foot back down, and then continuing to sew. That gives you a really nice sharp corner when you're doing something like a rectangle or a V. And so here is just a little detail of what I'm doing. Make sure to backstitch when you get to the end, and here's how it looks. Like I said, the point is a little funny of the fabric, but that's okay. I'm just going to fold that under and then just kind of secure it in place. This is at the bottom of your baby's romper. It doesn't need to look exactly perfect, but like I said, if I did this again, I'd probably change up the pattern just a little bit so it wasn't a triangle. Now I'm cutting straps, and these are about 2 inches by 24 inches, and I have my fabric double layered, so I end up with 2 straps but 4 rectangle pieces. And then put those right sides together, just like before, where the nice parts of the fabric is touching, and have them kind of all lined up along the rectangles, and do that for each strap. And then I'm using my sewing clips again and just securing everything in place. You don't need to go too crazy with pins or clips on this, just make sure everything's in place, and then using my straight stitch to go all the way around, using that same leave the needle in method as before for the corners, and then just do 3 sides of this strap, leaving one end open, like so. In the side that you didn't leave open, where you did sew the corners, make sure to cut off a little bit of the excess bulk here. You don't need to do it for the entire strap. I just do it near the ends, down a little bit to get rid of some of that excess bulk. And then using a loop turner, I will flip these right side out through the edge that I left open and just pulling it. And then working out those corners a little bit, like so. And then just pressing this down nicely so everything is flat. And then I'm going to finish those edges with a zigzag stitch, or I'm going to use my serger. And now I am just attaching those straps with those raw edges to the top band. I'm kind of just eyeballing where an even placement would be, using a ruler, stretching it out, and just kind of picking about 1.5 inches, 2 inches from the edge, and then securing those on. I'm just using a straight stitch on my regular sewing machine to attach a strap, and doing this 4 times, 2 on the front and 2 on the back. And now I have these really adorable ties that I can tie in a bow, and they just make the really sweetest detail finish for this bubble romper. And here is the final product. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you have any questions at all.